Harper Audio presents Fear is the Key by Alistair MacLean, read by Jonathan Oliver. Prologue. May the 3rd, 1958. If you could call a 10-by-6 wooden box mounted on a four-wheel trailer an office, then I was sitting in my office. I'd been sitting there for 4 hours. The earphones were beginning to hurt, and the darkness was coming in from the swamps and the sea. But if I had to sit there all night, then I was going to do just that. Those earphones were the most important thing in the world. They were the only remaining contact between me and all the world held for me. Peter should have been within radio range 3 hours ago. It was a long haul north from Barranquilla, but we made that haul a score of times before. Our 3 DCs were old, but as mechanically perfect as unceasing care and meticulous attention could make them. Pete was a fine pilot, Barry a crack navigator. The West Caribbean forecast had been good, and it was far too early in the season for hurricanes. There was no conceivable reason why they shouldn't have been on the air hours ago. As it was, they must have already passed the point of nearest approach and be drawing away to the north towards Tampa, their destination. Could they have disobeyed my instructions to make the long dogleg by the Yucatan Strait and flown the direct route over Cuba instead? All sorts of unpleasant things could happen to planes flying over war-torn Cuba those days. It seemed unlikely, and when I thought of the cargo they were carrying, it seemed impossible. Where any element of risk was concerned, Pete was even more cautious and far-seeing than myself. Over in the corner of my office, on wheels, a radio was playing softly. It was tuned in to some English-speaking station, and for the second time that evening some hillbilly guitar player was singing softly of the death of mother, or wife, or sweetheart, I wasn't sure which. My red rose has turned to white, it was called. Red for life, and white for death. Red and white. The colours of the 3 planes of our Trans-Carib Air Charter Service. I was glad when the song stopped. There was nothing much else in the office. A desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and the big RCA receiver transmitter, powered by a heavy TRS cable that ran through the hole in the door and snaked across the grass and mud and one corner of the tarmac to the main terminal buildings. And there was a mirror. Elizabeth had put that up the only time she'd ever been here, and I'd never got around to taking it down. I looked in the mirror, and that was a mistake. Black hair, black brows, dark blue eyes, and a white, strained, haggard face, to remind me how desperately worried I was. As if I needed reminding. I looked away and stared out of the window. That was hardly any better. The only advantage was that I could no longer see myself. I certainly couldn't see anything else. Even at the best of times, there was little enough to see through that window. Just the 10 empty, desolate miles of flat swampland, stretching from the Stanley Field Airport to Belize. But now that the Honduras rainy season had begun, only that morning, the tiny tidal waves of water rolling endlessly down the single sheet of glass, and the torn and lowering and ragged hurrying clouds driving their slanting rain into the parched and steaming earth, turned the world beyond the window into a grey and misty nothingness. I tapped out our call sign. The same result as the last 500 times I tapped it. Silence. I altered the waveband to check the reception was still okay. Heard a swift succession of voices, static, singing, music, and homed back on our own frequency again. The most important flight the Trans-Carib Air Charter Co. had ever made, and I had to be stuck here in our tiny sub-office, waiting endlessly for the spare carburettor that never came. And until I got it, that red and white DC parked not 50 yards away on the apron was about as useful to me right then as a pair of sunglasses. They'd have got off from Barranquilla, I was certain of that. I'd had the first news 3 days ago, the day I had arrived here, and the coded cable had made no mention of any possible trouble. Everything highly secret. Only 3 permanent civil servants knew anything about it. Lloyd's willing to carry the risk, even although at one of the big
Sample complete. Ready to continue?